not a trivial topic. And the problem with doing asterisms is if you make a mistake, you will be sorry. So the handout, if you downloaded my handouts, let me tell you what handout we'll be starting with. It's called Creating New Asterisms, the Diamond of Virgo. So we're going to be concentrating on a new asterism that isn't new. You'll see what I mean. So if you have that handout, you might want to just refer to that. What I'm going to do is show you a little bit about asterisms, why they're really great and why they stick, and what you can do to make them great and make them do what you want them to do. So I'm going to share one of my 47 screens here. So you should be seeing my render box screen as well as my ATM4 screen.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do is I want to turn on the asterisms by the pre-flight GUI. If you go in, I'm not going to show you all this stuff because you guys are experts. If you go into the constellations under the options, under stick figures, you can change it to different things. And one of the things you can pick is asterisms. So when you do that and you click on asterisms, this is what you get. Better known as all the asterisms. And if you want clarification, then you can put the labels up, and that makes everything crystal clear. Yeah, so in other words, you're probably never going to use asterisms in this format. They are basically useless in this way. At least I've never used them this way, except maybe to get a laugh like I just did. So what I'm going to do is show you what I want to do, and then I'm going to teach you how to do it. Okay, so I'm going to launch this little Q file, or attempt to. You'll be able to see what it's doing as well as what it does on the screen. So the Diamond of Virgo is a lesser known asterism. It actually has 4 bright stars, or what I would call 3 bright stars and 1 not so bright star. And you may or may not at this scale be able to see what they are, but this is the nebula. This is Cor Caroli. This is Arcturus, and this is Spica. So it's called the Diamond of Virgo because, of course, it's as if Virgo down here, Spica, of course, is the grain of wheat. She's holding on to this grain of wheat. It means fertility or stupidity or something. I don't know what it means, but so this is her diamond. It's bigger than she is, which is, you know, like a movie star kind of a thing. All right, so that's Ducky. We can. But I'm not sure that that's the most effective way to teach people to find an asterism. And so what I've done with this is what I've done with the winter hexagon. Arcturus is a star which is easily found because you're following the arc of the handle to it. And so what I've done is I've set up a little routine, and I'm putting lines between the stars. These lines are actually asterisms that I have created and put into the asterism file, a file which you're supposed to have on your system. And I don't know if you do. It is in my downloads. It's a folder it's called like new asterism file or something. If you replace the asterism file with that file, you'll have these lines. And I'm going to show you how to do that. All I'm doing here is drawing lines between the stars, naming them, drawing the line, creating a diamond. I just think that pedagogically speaking, that's a much more effective way of teaching people an asterism. Okay, and there I'm basically just naming it. Okay. Now you're saying, okay, so what's the big deal? Well, let me show you. You can actually, if I open up the list queue here, you will see that indeed the Diamond of Virgo is an asterism which you can access because it's already in the original asterism file because it's a fairly well-known asterism for nerds like Eric and myself. The problem is that when you turn it on, the whole thing comes on at once, and that's all you can do. There's no way that you can have it do individual lines without actually creating an asterism, which is each individual line. And so I'm going to show you how to do that, and in the process, basically show you how you make new asterisms, the whole process you need to go through to do that. Okay, sound like fun? No, but we're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to go through the handout a little bit. So I'm going to share a different screen, or at least try to. So if you have the handout, you can follow along. And again, if you have any questions as we go, feel free to interrupt. In fact, I like interactions better than no interactions. One of the things you'll need if you're going to set up asterisms is you need to know what the names of the stars are, or better, you need to know their Hipparchus numbers. The Hipparchus satellite was sent up in the, I forget when, late 1990s, it doesn't matter. But all the bright stars have a Hipparchus number. The reason I say this, you can get this number right off of Starry Night. Just use your arrow and point to the star, do a show info, and it'll tell you the Hipparchus number. Why do I care about that? Because I have never had a failure naming stars in ATM4 if I use Hipparchus numbers. Every once in a while, if I use the proper name, there's a feature in ATM4 that just laughs at you and says, I don't know what that is. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That is a feature. But Hipparchus numbers always work. So it's just nice to have those before you go into this. The next thing you'd like to know, and I'll show you why, is you need to know roughly what's the right ascension and declination of the asterism that you want to put up in the sky. Again, you can get that by going to the sky, put your arrow in the sky, and read off what the RA and dec is with the show info button. And in this particular case, I just went to, okay, I want to draw a line from Arcturus to Spica. I put my cursor near the part of the sky that I thought would be a nice place to put the label, read this off, RA and dec. And those have to be converted to decimal degrees because that's how they're going to be read in by Starry Night. I'm assuming people can do that, right? Because hours 15 degrees per hour. Okay, and obviously declination is already in degrees. You just have to divide minutes by 60 and have it. So you need that information as well. Okay, now the first thing you have to do is you have to edit the asterisms.txt file. Linda Powell will tell you that this is like trading off a couple of your grandkids, okay? This is a very dangerous thing to do. So make sure you save the original file somewhere safe. In case you make a mistake, you can always replace it. If you mess it up, you'll wish you had a backup of it. So let me show you where it is. I use Notepad++ because I think it's the best simple word editor that there is. This was recommended to me by Clint. You know, whatever Clint says, I do. So this file is in Sky Data. And have you guys seen the file thing that I gave everybody? I told some people, not everybody knows about this. I have a document called File Locations in Preview Suite in Windows 10, and there's a summary at the end that tells you where all the things are found in Preview Suite. You need to know those file locations in order to do these kinds of editing and fixing things, okay? So I refer you to that document. So the Sky Data folder is located on your root. So you go to C, you go to Program Data. In some systems, this may be hidden. You'll have to unhide it. Within Program Data, you go to Simulation Curriculum because that's the company that made Starry Night. Starry Night Prefs, and there's our famous sky data folder. This is where gigabytes of information reside that Starry Night loads in. All kinds of stuff. Your panoramas, your constellation images, etc. What we want is the asterisms folder. So let's go into the asterisms folder, and you'll see there's a lot of text files. The one that we want to edit, the most important one in this entire folder, is asterisms.txt. That's the one we want to look at. That's the one we want to edit. Okay, so I would open that up and edit it. Okay, I'm not going to do that here because I'm locked into Starry Night. So I don't want to try to mess with a file that Starry Night is reading. That file is about 500 lines long, and it has a bunch of asterisms in it. Each asterism has a number. If you look at these HTML lines, each asterism has a number. So let's just take a look at asterism 45. So the number tells you that's one asterism. All these commands are for one asterism. So let's take a look at them. The first one, asterism center deck, center, that's how Canadians spell center, because they wrote the program, so they get to spell it the way they want. Or English people do that too. Okay, value equals 35.8. That is the declination in decimal degrees of where the label will be put when we write a label. Asterism center RA, this is decimal degrees of right ascension. That's the right ascension of where you want the label to be put. So this is entirely up to you where you want to put the label. That's why it's good to know beforehand where you want to put this label, so it'll display next to your new asterism. Okay, the next line that pertains to this asterism 45, okay, it says Aldebaran to Capella. This is actually part of the winter hexagon thing that I made for volume 4 that draws a line from Aldebaran to Capella, part of the winter hexagon. So this is the name of the asterism. The constellation number doesn't really pertain so much to asterisms. This number originally has to do with the number of the constellation 1 through 88. So I always use 100. It doesn't seem to matter. So just use 100. It's not a problem. This is the most important thing in the asterism. It's the asterism line, the line that's going to draw between two stars. This has got to be exactly this format. There has to be a space between that quote and the word value. There cannot be any spaces in here. There has to be a space between the equal sign and the name of the star. Okay, that's important. So what this is saying is, for this asterism, the first line you're going to draw, in this case there only is one line, is going to go from this star to this star. HIP 21421 is actually Aldebaran. HIP 24608 is Capella. And the reason I'm using that instead of the names is I tried to use the names and it didn't work. I used the Hipparchus numbers and it works. That's a feature. Okay, and then the asterism name, this should be the same as the common name, okay, for asterisms. For constellations, you know, there's a common name and then there's the real name. Like Andromeda is the chain maiden, right? So there's two different, yes, you understand what I'm saying? For asterisms, it's just use the same one. And that's it. So that asterism 45, is simply going to draw a line between those two stars. And if I tell it to label, it'll put Aldebaran to Capella. So far, so good? If I was going to make a bigger one, then I'd have asterism line 2, asterism line 3, and so on and so forth. You can look that over in the asterism file if you wish. So after 45, there's asterism 46, 47. Okay, now 48, 49, etc. So far, so good?
Yep.
And then the last 3 lines, these have to remain the way that, this is the way they have to be. The asterism group name has to be Asterisms. Search this group. This allows Starry Night to search it if you do a search in the Find Options pane. And then this is the way you close off an HTML file. This is the original Asterisms file before I started to edit it to put in my new lines. Okay, now I want to add in the lines for the diamond of Virgo. So this is what I did. Since this really was kind of nice. Since my last asterism, and asterism 49 is a line, what I did was I cut and paste asterism 49. Those 6 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, and then pasted them before that, and that's what this shows. So you'll see asterism 49 goes to line 491. I cut and pasted those 6 lines again. Why did I do that? Because I want to retain that format. That format I know already works. So I'm just going to type over that. That way I won't make any mistakes and put spaces in where there shouldn't be, etc. Does that make sense? I can't make any mistakes. Okay. So the first thing I have to do, so these arrows are just showing you, these are the 6 lines that I put in that are just copied of these. I have to change that number 49 to, what do you think I change it to? This is not a trick question. 52? Kathy Overton said 52.
50.
50. Now, you might say, well, that's just the logical. Why not put 60? If you do not number them sequentially, this is really important. I found this out the hard way. If you come up and you have 49 asterisms, and then this one I call 51, it gets to 49, doesn't see 50 and says, that's it, there's no more, and gives up the ghost. Everything beyond 49 will not be looked at. The asterisms in this file have to be sequentially numbered. No gaps. Wherever there's a gap, that's where it ends. Okay? Super important. So I've got to change these guys to 50, which I think I do here. Look at that. 50. I did it right. Okay. So then what I want to do is I want to start changing the values to the values that I found for the first line, which I'm going to make. And I forget which one that is. That's going to be Arcturus to Spica. So here's the declination where I put up the label, the right ascension. Again, these I had up earlier when I checked it. I want to call the line Arcturus to Spica, make it number 100. Here's my most important line. Make that line go from Arcturus to Spica. Now you're saying, wait a minute, you said it used the Hipparchus numbers. I live dangerously. I tried it to see if it would work. It worked. So I'm leaving it. It ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay, so far so good? So then I want my other lines. So that's what this is. See, 51, 52, 53, yes? So I've added 4 lines, 50, 51, 52, 53. Each one's in the same format, but they have different RAs and decks for where the labels, different labels, Spica to the nebula, a different line command. You may never have heard of Cora Caroli. I never had. So I didn't trust putting Cora Caroli in for a star name, so I used its Hipparchus number. And by the way, if you use a Hipparchus number with a space or without a space, somehow Starry Night knows the difference. It doesn't matter. It's the only time I've ever found spaces not to matter in an asterism file. Go figure. And then when you're done, you've got all those 4 lines. Then you just end it with those, again, the 3 lines that hopefully you didn't touch at the end. So far, so good? So what you would do is, this is how you would create asterisms. If I go back to the original file, I just want to show you. What? No. Let me show you. No, it doesn't matter. How about the winter triangle? So the winter triangle is number 32. I just want to show you one that has more than one line. So here's the, again, the right ascension declination, where to put the label. There's your name. Again, the constellation number 100, it doesn't matter. So here's your, if you have more than one line, see, it's just line 2, line 3, exactly the same format. Okay, name again, and that's the end of it. Okay, so however many lines are in your asterism, that's, you'll see that there. It's pretty straightforward. When you get into this file, as I did the very first time, let's just take a look at this one. You see the scorpion? You get in here and it's like, holy crap, what star is this? This is the original name of the star in an alien language right there. Now, see, when the Starry Night people did this originally, they didn't do it like I do it. They didn't do it one star at a time. They had the computer come up with these things. And so the computer assigned these weird numbers to the star names. Okay, so if you get in here, don't freak out that you see these weird numbers. You can name things as just the star name or the Hipparchus number. Okay, if you see these strange looking star names, just know those are the original computerized names when this thing was set up like 30 years ago, before there was a side dome. Okay. So far, so good? Okay. So once you've saved your asterisms file, then you would save it back to sky data, where I should, yes? So far, so good? Okay. So then you'd think, okay, I can use it now. So yeah, you can use it. It'll come on when you click on all the asterisms, but it will not turn on with ATM4. We have another step we have to do in ATM4. It's not a hard step, but it's something we have to do. ATM4 doesn't know anything about our new asterism. We have to tell it that we've made a new asterism. Okay, you ready for that? Piece of cake, don't freak out, it's easy. We have to go to a file. This is in a different location. It's on your root disk, but this time it's in the program files x86 folder, in the Spitz Inc. folder, in the Starry Night data folder. Do you want me to find it for you, or are you happy? I'll find it for you if you want. I don't see any heads saying yes or no. Doesn't matter. When you open that folder, you get this whole bunch of list of SNA files. Okay. Frankly, I don't know what SNA stands for. It's probably some kind of swear word. But the one that you want is asterism names, because this is where our asterism names reside that ATM4 is going to read. If we open up that file with WordPad or Notepad++, it'll have a list of all the asterism names that are in the asterism folder that it last knew about before we added our new ones. Are you with me? This is how ATM4 knows what to drop down in its drop-down list. It looks at this list, and this is what will be in the drop-down list, which I'll show you in a minute. But there right at the moment, there's the Diamond of Virgo. That's the original one, but there's no lines from Denebula to Cor Caroli or any, the things we just added. There's nothing in there. We've got to add those, and so that's what I did. So I put in Arcturus to Spica. I put in Cor Caroli to Arcturus. Notice these have to be spelled exactly the same as the asterism name that you gave in, right? That makes sense, right? If you misspell it, if it's spelled differently than what you said in the asterism file, it's not going to find it. Just as importantly, because it's an HTML thing, you can't read spaces. You have to put an underscore in for spaces. Are you with me? I'm old. If I can do this, you can do it. Piece of cake. Please put them in alphabetical order, okay? This will make finding them easy. This is something that Spitz doesn't know anything about, is alphabetical order. Dan is laughing because he knows, right? All the list cues and all the, right? The drop-down menus is as if a drunk put that stuff together. They just left it in the order in which they put them in, you know what I mean? So trying to find cues and toggles and all this crap. Yeah, exactly. So please keep this in alphabetical order. So at least the stuff that the users make is alphabetical. Okay. So now you edit that file carefully, save it back into that folder, and then you restart Starry Night. And what you'll find, I'll show you this for real, what you'll find is in the list file, all those new asterisms will be there. So let me show you that for real. So let me share my render box screen again. So here's the list command. And if I want to draw just a line, one of these lines, say from Denebula to Cor Caroli, if I do the drop-down menu, okay, there's Denebula to Cor Caroli. It has read that new asterism's name, right? There's Cor Caroli to Arcturus, right, etc. So all the new asterisms, all being read from the asterism text file, they're all in there, and you have access to them via the list command. That's what you want. Why is that powerful? Because that is the only way to turn individual asterisms on and off. Are you with me? Okay. To access those individual asterisms within the asterism text file, you have got to access them through the list command. And your asterisms name SNA file has got to have the names of all those asterisms in that file. Okay. And once it does, then you're good. You're good to go. You can pull up any asterism that you want. Okay. So there's all kinds of asterisms, right? I mean, there's the one that you might use a great deal is the pointer stars. And again, right, it goes from Meteoric to Doobie to Polaris. This wasn't in there. I put this in there. And I use this in every single planetarium show that Steve and I do. We use that asterism. So you may have your own asterisms, or you may find that drawing lines, you know, I have a line that goes the other way that points to Regulus. You can use the Dipper to find Leo and Regulus. That can be quite handy. So you can come up with your own asterisms that makes, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So unlike Linda Powell, don't be afraid of doing this. Just make sure you keep a copy of the original asterisms.txt file somewhere else, okay? Don't edit it and not have a copy of the original, just in case the worst happens.
Dave?
Yes.
Stop me if this is too far, but I've always been wondering about taking this idea one step further to just fixing, in my word, fixing a constellation I feel is being traced wrong. Have you attempted to go in and not make asterisms, but actually fix constellations?
Yes, in fact, I did that originally, Dan. When my students have to memorize all the constellations and the names of all stars in the sky. No, that's a joke. But I do make them memorize 30 of them.
Okay.
And they have to learn about 20 bright stars. So the maps that I give them in lab come from Sky Publishing Corporation.
Right.
And they have slightly different tracings.
They do.
So I went into the file that has the constellations, and I edited every one that my students would need to know, so that they match the maps. So the answer is yes. If you're patient enough, you can make the lines do whatever you want to do.
Okay, cool.
And so on my system, I don't think I put that file in my preview suite, but
It's
on
similar? The process is similar though?
it's very similar.
Okay, cool.
You want me to take a look?
Oh, I don't need to waste everybody else's time if it's not in their interest. But if I know it's similar, I know I can probably fidget around. I was just wondering if it was possible.
Yeah, it is yes, absolutely. You can make your own constellations. Yes.
Cool.
Your own stick figure is what we're talking about. And of course, you have a choice of, right? You have the H.A. Ray ones and so on, but you may not like certain ones. I like the ones that my students have to learn because it matches their maps. So that's why I did that. I have actually given that file to at least 1 or 2 people who use the same maps. Again, there's no sense reinventing the wheel. I don't remember how many hours I put into that, but I'd be happy to share that if people use the Sky Publishing map for learning constellations. That's a very good question.
And I've done that too. Like I think after the first time I saw Dr. Bradstreet do this presentation, I went home and I adjusted a couple of the constellation asterisms.
The
So it was
constellation or constellation asterism?
the asterism, the actual stick figure.
Oh, okay, I see.
But
Yeah.
Christy, he's saying, but the regular constellations or asterisms?
Me?
I adjusted Virgo, so.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I want to adjust Aquila for one. But there's a couple other ones that you're right is off of my students' map is slightly off of the dome's map. I would love to sync them. Absolutely. Okay, cool. Glad to know it can be done. I'll fidget with it from here.
Well, let me share my screen again just for a minute. I just want to make sure. Let's see. Share screen. So I'm going to go back to Sky Data. And Dan, the one that you're thinking of is astronomical.txt.
Okay.
So if you open that up, that has all your constellations in it.
Looks very similar. Yep.
Oh, well, it's exactly the same format. Okay, and there should be 88 of them. But a feature of this is that it isn't. There's 89 and they're not in order. So have fun with that. I mean, you don't want it to be too easy.
Right.
They're all together, but they're not in a numerical order because of the way things are numbered. And, there's 9 down there because that goes after 88. I mean, you just have to hunt for it.
Sure.
But you can go through here. And again, the only tricky part is you got to be careful with these big, huge numbers.
Right.
You might not know what those are. Okay. I have a feeling that this number is HIP 69. You know what I mean? There's a HIP number after it.
Right.
And I think if you get rid of that number and just have the HIP number, I think that works too.
Cool.
that you could experiment with that. Again, save the file.
Of course, of course.
So the answer is you can do whatever you want.
I like it.
And I did that. So my file matches the star maps and not whatever original thing they were doing.
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. So far, so good? Your heads aren't blown yet? Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do, and this is a much shorter thing, this is something that when Dan's first time when he was here, I taught him how to do custom constellations. And this was something he liked a lot. If you look at my constellations, let me show you my constellations. My constellations are a little bit different than everybody else's. And that's because I'm used to mine.
They're pretty.
Yeah, I like mine. Harold, I gave them to Harold. Harold is indebted to me forever. I just have to find them.
Pennsylvania, and I don't have access to them right now.
Sorry.
Don't worry, I'll get them back.
So there's my constellations. And I just like those a lot better than the stick figures, and the kids do too. And where I didn't have, these are actually slides that I got off of postcards from what used to be the Hanson Planetarium. I got permission from them in 1972 to make these for my planetarium back in 72 when I was a freshman. And these are all off of postcards that you could buy at the planetarium. And I made them, took pictures, masked them out, and put them up in the sky and stuff. So I did all that before I had a side dome. I just did it with Starry Night, and then it was ready to go. So if you're interested in doing that, that's what this few last minutes we're going to spend. I'm going to show you how I did that and see if I can scare you enough to get you to not do it. But you might have your own pictures that you want to use instead of what's in Starry Night, or to use in addition. This is something I've been pushing Starry Night and Spitz for the past, whatever it is, 16 years. They have the ability to do different figures, but they don't. Like I would like to see Native American constellations and Polynesian constellations and Chinese constellations, etc. And although they say they want to do it, it's never been done. And
I want to do some of the Mayan ones.
and the Maya, Harold, that would be a great thing to do. So let me show you how it's done. First, you want to know where they live, okay? And they live in Sky Data, okay? So they live in your program data file in Sky Data. And there's a folder called Const Images. If you go into yours on Preview Suite, what you'll find, I think, is two folders called Default High Resolution and Low Resolution. And I'm pretty sure that Default High Resolution is what comes up. That's the ghostly figures. The reason they didn't originally do high resolution is it took too much memory. Now it's not a problem. This folder is one I put in. And the reason I call them cartoons is because alphabetically, what Starry Night does is it takes the first folder it finds alphabetically in the Const Images folder, and it takes that as the default set of constellations. Does that make sense? So that's why I call them cartoons, because I knew that would go in front of default. If you open up that folder, what you would find is instead of their Andromeda ping, I've got my wife's picture right here as Andromeda ping, and Aquarius and so on. And what I tried to do was orient these in the same orientation as the original pictures as best I could. And so what it would do is put the picture in place of the ghostly ones. Where I didn't have a postcard, I just kept the original ghostly pictures, which are DDS files. Okay, and so these had to be masked out and all that stuff. It's a lot of work. but doable. A lot easier to do with a computer than it is by hand. You don't want to have any idea what photolith is and painting masks. That's the kind of thing that there's large rooms in hell with people doing that. Now, that would be the first thing. You have to make your images that you want. You have to put them in a folder in Const images. Okay. And make sure you have a picture for every constellation. Just substitute in your pictures for the ones you want to substitute. The next thing you have to do, there is a file in the Sky Data folder, and it's called Const Images SST. I forget what that stands for, but it's a data file. And what it does is it tells Starry Night where to put the constellation picture. The format looks like this, and I'll just quick go through the format. See if I remember this stuff. Some of these don't mean anything and some do. Obviously the name, this is the name of the constellation picture it pulls up. If you're telling it it's a constellation, that's easy. Let's see. It's been so long since I did this. It's all in here. I just haven't read it.
Hey, Dr. B.
Yes.
So I was actually trying to play along, and since the extension on this is .sst, when I try and open that particularly, I'm told that I don't have an app that would be able to open that. So do you change the extension in order to edit that file?
It's just a text file, Laura. You should be able to open it.
Okay, mine didn't.
Yeah, if you had WordPad or Notepad++, it won't give you that message. If last resort is you could change it to a TXT and then it will definitely open it. But obviously when you save it, you got to rename it as an SST. But yeah, if you rename it, you'll be able to open it. So the different numbers in these lines, okay, like line 4, this one. This is telling you the center of where the picture is supposed to be in right ascension and declination decimal degrees. And the distance value is irrelevant. So this is the right ascension. This is the declination in degrees. This number means nothing. Just ignore that number. And then in line 5, this is how you adjust the width and height. This is a relative thing. You want to keep these the same. Otherwise, this is like changing a picture in Photoshop, where if you can change the width, and that's going to mess up the picture. Yes. So you can make the image bigger and smaller. Just make sure you do it in the same way. Otherwise, your picture is going to get distorted. This is really the most important one. This rotates the image. So you can rotate it from 0 to 360 degrees. If you're smart about it, you won't have to mess with any of these values. Just plunk in your picture. If you've got the picture in the same orientation as the original image, you won't have to mess with these at all. That's my high recommendation. That's what Dan did. That's definitely the way to go. Make your picture, your substitute picture, orient it so that it's in the exact same orientation as the picture you're substituting, and then you don't have to mess with this file at all. You don't know what I did. You don't want to know what I did. I spent a week doing this full time.
Dr. B, wouldn't you possibly have to change the scale on them though a little bit?
If you, maybe, it depends on the resolution of the picture. You'll have to try it. If it's too big or too small, then yes, you'd have to change the width and height numbers. That's true. So watch your resolution and so on. You just have to try it. It's a trial and error thing. I had to, for all 40 of the ones I changed, I had to adjust each one, I would say 8 or 9 times. And every time I adjust it, you've got to you've got to reload Starry Night. So you don't want to know how long it took me to do this. So, but it's not a small thing to do. But I think it was worth it. And I actually did this before our unit was put in. I did it over the summertime with desktop Starry Night, which made it a lot easier. So that's how you actually change constellations. Substitute in a picture. Try to orient the picture the same way as the picture, the original was, and then use this Constellation Images SST, see if how well it works. And if it isn't perfect, then you have to start messing with these numbers. Good luck with that. Again, I would save the original. Definitely save the original. Because if you don't and you mess it up, you're going to be very, very unhappy. Okay?
I'm not all that ambitious. I just want to try and change the Big Dipper to be a bird monster. I can't remember the Mayan name. And, you know.
Yeah, so
The Mayans had 88 distinct constellation figures, but
so Harold,
yeah,
the Big Dipper is not a constellation.
I know it's not. I know it's not.
Well, the reason I say that, I'm not being smart. I'm just saying that
I know.
you wouldn't go through any of this for that. You would make it a slide and throw it up on the dome as a slide.
Well, that sounds like an easier job.
Much easier.
I even have the picture already.
Yeah, so just use it as a slide, and you can orient it any way you want and size it any way you want. Just use the slide command in ATM4. That, in fact, if you saw my Boy Scout show with the Dippers, yes?
Yeah.
Those are slides. Those are not constellations. The constellations are inbred in Starry Night.
Yeah. I already have a drinking gourd thing where I use the Big Dipper, where I use slides.
Exactly. You'll do the same thing with your Mayan Dipper.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. And guys, if you have problems with this and you really want to do it, just email me. If you're dying to have my color constellations, I'll send them to you. I mean, I got that copyright permission in 1972. I think everybody there is dead, so I don't think it's a problem. But you know, if I go to jail because I've shared them, then you can bail me out. Okay? Brad, are you still here, or are you at a bar?
I'm still here.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we're done.
This is
You-
fantastic. Thank
You
you.
technically have another 10 minutes, Dave. You want to use it?
Oh, I have 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only 4:52.
Yeah, the social club starts at 5, so
Oh, sorry.
you don't
Tell
have
us
to
more
use it.
jokes.
No, I'm just, no, I don't have any more jokes. I do have, I showed this before. I don't know how many people were there, but I have a little routine that I did, the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. Does anybody want to see that? You didn't see it before? Laura,
Yes, please.
you want to see it? It only takes like an hour and a half. No, it's just like 5 minutes. It's something I set this up, and I may demonstrate this tomorrow with Steve's ATM4 thing. So let me share my screen again. So you should see the sky here and the thing. I'm going to run this, or try to run it. For those who aren't used to ATM4, I just loaded the scene. So the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, remember this is going to be, I'm going to send this out eventually as part of volume 4, a new addition to volume 4. But I put up the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, which took 400 orbits of the Hubble telescope to take that picture of 800 images. And I have it on both sides of the dome, so because I have concentric seating, you couldn't see it very well. It's not very impressive. So for a preview suite, this is something you'll need to do if you do stuff online with your students. This is the flat image version of it. And there are, I counted them this morning, there are 10,000 galaxies in that picture. So that's pretty cool, except it really doesn't tell you like how much of the sky does that cover? Because if it covers like a big part of the sky, 10,000 galaxies is like whoop-de-doo. So let's take a look and see if we can see how big it is. So there's our friend Orion. And then to the west of him is River Eridanus. And then a constellation almost nobody has heard of, Fornax. And the Hubble Ultra Deep Field was taken in Fornax because they felt sorry for it because nobody had ever heard of it before. So this is one way to make it famous. The real scientific reason for why they chose that part is twofold. The first is that you want to take a field that's far away from the ecliptic. So if I put up the ecliptic coordinates, you'll see that the Hubble Ultra Deep Field is very far from the ecliptic. Well, why do you want to keep it away from the ecliptic? Because of the zodiacal dust that lies in the plane of the solar system. It actually blocks the view of galaxies behind it. So that's one reason they put it down there, but that's not the only reason. The other reason is the Milky Way. You want to get it far from the plane of the Milky Way. So here are galactic coordinates. And again, you can see the deep field is also close to the south galactic pole. And the reason you want to stay away from the Milky Way is because trying to look along the Milky Way is a problem. You want to look perpendicular to the Milky Way, not along its disk, because the Milky Way gas and dust, even the halo, is going to try to block some of your view. If you want a clean, pristine picture of the universe, you don't want the Milky Way to get in the way either. And so Fornax is both away from the ecliptic and away from the Milky Way equator. So let's take a look and see how big this field actually is. This image is actually embedded in Starry Night, so I didn't put this in there. So there it is, and you say, well, that's cool. We zoomed in quite a bit. That still doesn't do it for me. This is 2.4 arc minutes by 2.4 arc minutes. And probably for most of you, that doesn't mean a lot either. So let's compare it to something whose angular size in the sky you do have a feeling for. And that's the moon. So there's the moon to scale with the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. The moon's about 31 arc minutes across compared to 2.4. So that helps to put it in perspective. So if we zoom back out and see the full sky, I picked this date in December because of the full moon, December 2020. That is the real size of the moon. I didn't enlarge it. If you've ever looked at the moon in the planetarium sky, it's very tiny. Yes, that's why you enlarge it. So it really does cover. If you've ever tried to take a picture of a moon with a camera and you get the picture back, it's like, good grief. That's because your brain fools you. The sun and the moon are very small in the sky. And for the fun of it, you can actually estimate the number of stars in the universe from that one picture. Because that picture, that part of the sky was taken because it's basically empty. So if you assume that every square the size of that image has 10,000 galaxies in it, if you calculate it, it takes about 12.7 million of those images to cover the entire sky. So if there's 10,000 galaxies in every single one of those 12.7 million images, you multiply those numbers together, you get 127 billion. So that would be 127 billion galaxies visible from Earth. It would only take the Hubble 1 million years to take that many pictures. That's literally true. So if there's about 100 billion stars per galaxy, and that's pretty conservative, you'd multiply 100 billion times 127 billion, and that gives you 12,700 quintillion. That's even bigger than the national debt. But just to put it in perspective, there's about 7.5 quintillion grains of sand on the seashores of the Earth. So there are definitely more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on the Earth. So that's kind of a mind-blowing thing. So if you want people to wet their pants, that would be a good one to show them before they leave. So I'm
Dr. Bradstreet, is that when you have the number of how many Hubble deep fields you have to cover the whole sky, is that just one hemisphere or is that both hemispheres?
that's in, no, Christy, that's the whole sky, both hemispheres. Yep. No, good question. Yeah, so I'm gonna include that as part of the volume 4 curriculum, because I think that people, unless you know the scale of the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, it doesn't have the impact because they don't know how much the sky it covers.
Thank you.
The other part is that if it's the other thing I've heard is if you have a drinking straw about 9 feet long and point it up into the sky, that's about how much area of sky it covers. So that might mean something to people as well. Okay, Brad, I'm ready. I'm done.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dave. So we're done with courses for the day. We have the social hour starting right now. So you're all welcome to kind of relax and join us over there. Grab a drink if you want, grab a snack if you want, grab a small pet if you want, child, I guess, if you want. And it's just, place to kind of hang out. If you have questions, you can ask. If you just want to chat about anything, that's kind of what it's for. It's kind of a social hour. So hope to see you all over there. And thanks.
Is Spitz providing the drinks?
Yeah. Give us your drink orders and we'll get them in the mail for you.
All right, good enough.
Pennsylvania is very easy to move liquor in and out.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.